Hey everyone, it's been a while since I went live, and today is going to be a fun one. Tony Robbins, need I say more? So I purchased the VIP pass for, I'm a little bright here, but hey, it's that time of day at noon in my place. And I really enjoyed the 5-day New World Challenge. And so the point for me to share this was really to get all of you to think about those of you that may have not had the opportunity to watch it. It was on Facebook, YouTube for free. I decided to do the VIP to go backstage, but mainly it's because I wanted the replays. And I knew that it was for a good cause. I donated 100 meals for people to, feed people. So great cause. Now we're going to step in today over the course of what really happened in those 5 days, add a couple of tidbits. I did created some screenshots to share. So a couple of visuals that I thought were great, but I'm going to tell you right now, there's nothing like it but watching the man. So I'm going to do my best to share my quick recap of what actually happened. So those of you that are not familiar, I do have a YouTube channel, which is the Rethink with Veronica YouTube channel. So if you go over there and subscribe, you'll be able to get notified of all of my lives, plus the extra information that I always put in the description will always be there. And don't forget to click that notified bell or button to get notified when I post my new upcoming lives. So I just wanted to put that a tidbit in there. Now, again, I am Veronica Stewart. I am a mindset and success coach that really helps individuals get to the seat at the management table. So what does that really mean? It can mean a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's building your own personal leadership. And we're going to dive into a lot of things, what Tony did in the last 5 days of this New World Challenge, which is all about your personal leadership. So let's get into it, right? So I'm going to share my screen here. Give me one quick second. All right. And that is not the one that I want to share with you right away. That's like the end. So day one was all about creating breakthroughs. And so he was setting the stage of what is your state, right? All about your emotions, what's inside of you, and what are the stories that you tell yourself. A lot of times when we're setting up to do something, we're always thinking about how we do it. And he was very clear of that's not where you start. It's always about setting that up. So I'm checking my notes here just so I don't forget. I get excited talking about this. You know, it's all about the Tony that I forget the things that I wanted to say. But he really emphasized a lot about energy. And this is something when we are not motivated to do particular things, this is where he has a lot of those exercises, a lot of those things to kind of bring your levels up. Throughout the course of the 5 days, it started to become apparent and obvious how that really helps open yourself. And I'll explain in a couple of slides of getting us there. And so this here is the snapshot of energy is a habit. Goal is the energy to be rich. Tons of quotes on day one, tons of them. The strongest force in the human personality is the need to stay consistent with how you'll identify yourselves. And so he always talks about the I am. And once you believe it, you will live it. Oh, that was day one on here. I am like messed up my days already. See what ends up happening with all my notes here. I have notes galore. Now, if I really jump back of how this made sense to me, those of you that may or may not know, I started to expand my knowledge set on the type of coaching structures or just even my own personal transformation. So I decided to get my NLP certification. Now that really blew my mind and opened me up. Now, Tony talks about this where it is, back in the 70s. This is old stuff, right? They've evolved NLP actually through the years. So he still uses aspects of it, which I saw through the course of the days. But more importantly, it's really about our mindset. And so when he talks about the breakthrough, what really my takeaway from day one, it was about the stories that we tell ourselves. It's the emotional state. And breakthrough, I loved how he started framing problems as gifts, right? They're opportunities. And he had us go through an exercise where he said, when in your life did you ever had a moment, and I always talk about stacking the pain, where you just decided if it was a pain point, if it was something that was inspiring to you, whatever it was, that you basically said enough's enough. And I watch some of my friends on Facebook, which they're doing great things, right? They're starting to exercise, be healthy. Like you hear these stories all the time with people that you know or don't know. And there was always this one thing that triggered for them to start changing. So this is really what breakthrough is all about. I only have 30 minutes, so I don't want to get too hung up on each one of these days, but really hit home on the important things. And it's always about, if you see there, everything grows or it dies, progress equals happiness. And he stresses this through all the 3 days about taking action. And really, change doesn't happen unless you do something about it. Innovation doesn't happen unless you change. And so it's all about doing something different, which is something that I talk about all the time, about rethinking the impossible. So this is really my takeaway, and that is a quick, doesn't give justice of everything that happened that day. He actually went over, it was a long day on day one. And I'm actually going to be reading my notes over, and I'm going to watch it again and take even more notes. One of the great things, and he pointed this out, and I agree, and I learned this probably many moons ago as a young child, of writing things down, right? We have a short-term memory where we have a lot of senses that come in for us that, we hear, we see, we feel. And there's something that when we write things down, we tend to remember. And I have my notebook here. I even was like the person, probably could say, of color code. I remember in college, people used to take my notes and be like, you take such good notes. But it was the only way for it to really retain better for me, because there was so much, information coming my way. And in all honesty, these 5 days, it was a lot of information. And I'm so glad that I have the replays in truth. Now I'm going to jump to day 2 here. So we're only getting started here. The parties are almost, going here. Because every day, believe it or not, gets better. It was like, wow. I hit, day 3, I couldn't watch that one, and I hit the replay and I was like, oh my God, I got to back this up and like watch the other one again. And power of identity. Now, identity is what I like to talk about, is your B state, who you want to be, who you believe, and who you are. And so I mentioned this in my notes that I fumbled on about the I am. And this is extremely important, is the state of where you believe, who you believe you are. And I've been practicing this a lot, coming across, with my NLP certification and a lot of the books that they always recommend in the Happy on Mondays method program that I'm in right now. And what you think about yourself is, the identity of what you believe, the universe hears, and it's also how you are going to start getting to action. It's crazy. And I've been practicing this probably about in the last 90 days profoundly, even in everything that I say. It's just everything that I'm trying to achieve, both personally and professionally. I have started to say I am. And just those words and the way that you say it, it's magical. And so I have actually been trying this, and they are right. And any of you that has tried it out there, I would love to hear from you. If you've started doing these I am statements, then that would be great. So I am going to do, oh, Keith, you say stand up, please. Oh, no, this is sit down. I'm not doing the Tony Robbins right now. I was already jumping up earlier on my repay. But on this one, we're going to continue on day 2 and finish that up, where trying to think of one of the things that really my takeaway from day 2 that was so profound, and the storytelling. One of the great things that Tony does is draws you in of the stories that he tells, either from personally, the people that he's coached throughout every single day. And he talks about his life story, his moment of his breakthrough, and so forth. And those of you, when you start telling those stories, and then you start thinking about the identity of what you stepped into, it all starts to come together. Now, he has the 5 to thrive, create a compelling future, reasons to use your skills. And he repeats this a lot over the course of the 5 days. And he talks about your focus, your physiology, and then the language and meaning. And this is something that I've learned recently in my Happy on Mondays certification with the method and using NLP in truth, is that my state of where I am has a lot to do with my physiology. It has a lot to do of how I'm focusing on things and the language and meaning. And I'm going to probably tap into language and meaning a little bit more in the other days, because he played this thing I'm going to share with you guys. And this is why I want to kind of rush through, that I thought was awesome. I don't know if you've seen the Ellen show about how we perceive things and meanings, which I thought was great. And I found it on YouTube, and I wanted to share it with you guys if it works out here. Now, on day 3 is create your own economy. And I thought this one was fabulous. This was one of my favorite days, just because this is where my head is at right now in my life, not only just in my personal transformation, but really of value. And yes, you might look at it and say, create your own economy, and this has to do with entrepreneurship. Oh, and this is about money. Actually not. What he was really trying to tell the story is about the more that you realize the value that you can bring to the table, there's a direct correlation to the growth of what you do on an income level. And so that's where he's talking about creating your own economy. You don't necessarily have to go and start your own business necessarily, but you have to think about how you're retooling yourself and growing and developing. So me being an agile coach, and we talk about growth mindset and being a learner, this is pretty natural, I'd say, for a lot of us that have drank that agile Kool-Aid, that we are always about retooling ourselves and growing. And I believe everyone has this capability if you really want to grow. And when you talk about, oh, well, there's all these people out in the world that have X, Y, and Z job, and, they're never going to be able to go to college and be able to do that type of work, or they didn't have the ability to go to college, Veronica, right? There's all these stories of how somebody might have been hindered. Well, you hear stories of people like Tony Robbins that didn't come from much, that made something for themselves. And the number one thing that a lot of them talk about is how they find value in the world. And I loved the story with the Spanx founder, Sarah Blakely. And you have to watch that. If you Google it, her interviews and how she made it, it's phenomenal just to watch her story. And I loved her hustle and persistence and determination. And she was driven more by making sure that she was talking to, and she always referred as her. It wasn't about herself. It was about that ideal client. And that is what she was always channeling. And then she always talked about her purpose, her why. And I loved the story of her father, of how she was raised, where she was challenged about failure. And God, if I had a classroom of kids, or if I had kids, I think this would be one that would be a big takeaway. Any of you, those that are around people that are still growing and evolving, the younger generation, this is something to think about. If you haven't started it and you're not doing it, this is so great. And her father would ask her brother and her, what did they fail that day? Because he wanted that to teach them that failure was about learning and growing. And if she didn't come and talk about what she failed, right? And it ended up being like a fun thing. And she laughed about it and said, oh, yeah, she was excited to come home and tell her dad that she failed because she didn't get the lead in the play. And so her father was teaching her to get comfortable with failing. And I loved this story because we are so trained, right? I was an honor student. I got good grades. That status, right? We're driven by getting good grades, doing this, doing X, but we never, how many of you have ever been in a situation where failure was encouraged and celebrated, and the conversations of what you did about it was far more important than getting the A? Imagine that. And I just thought that was amazing. That was wow. That was one of the takeaways that she remembered. And still to this day, it's a part of who she is. And that's probably the one thing from here, from day 2, I thought was just awesome, her story. So watch her story. Now, day 4 was about relationships. What to even say about relationships. It was pretty touching. It can hit you on so many different levels. But the one thing that I know that was so important is about what you give, not worrying about what you get. And in order to have profound relationships and have ones that have meaning, it's all about being more focused on what you give versus being worried about what you receive. And that came out pretty clear. Now, I loved how when he was talking about the difference between the feminine and masculine, and it was so true, where, and he had a fun video on day 5 with this woman with the nail in the head between her spouse and her, about how he only was concerned about solving the problem and getting the nail out of the head. And she was like, but you're not listening to me. And I was chuckling because if pay attention to some of the people, if they have more driven by feminine energy or masculine energy, because I don't always believe that every female is wired in this way. I've met even some females that are wired and more with masculine energy, and they want to be the problem solvers. And that could have been just maybe their environment, the way they grew up, or I don't know. But it's just kind of a fun experiment, and pay attention and observe maybe people that that I'm already talking about this, that you can name. And he talked about problems. Let me look at my notes here because I'm not going to remember all these things. So he talked about in the masculine energy that men, you like to destroy and break through, right? But he talked about the ability to produce results and makes you a leader, more outcome-driven focus. Probably sounds familiar to some of you, right? Then he talked about the feminine energy, where problems are a way to connect. It's more about the process. and that in the feminine like to get into levels of details, which being the protectors and kind of at nature, wanting to know how to get from A to B, the path, worrying about the kids. And so kind of that natural relationship between the two different male and female when it comes to the human species. What I thought was interesting while he was telling some of his stories was when I would go into corporations, and I'm kind of a person that likes to talk about the process and kind of talk through it. Well, if you know that a lot of the people that are higher up in the levels of corporations, yes, it's predominantly male. Well, imagine what I just described, that they're more about the outcome and not wanting to get into the details of the process. And so I had to figure out, and I don't always do this well, this is actually something I'm working on, to get more to be a point person, as I call it, versus the storyteller. Because a lot of times the storytelling people tend to be more of that feminine energy of wanting to talk about the process, wanting to talk about the detail, wanting to go through all of that. And so when you're in these corporations and you have that dominant masculine energy where they just get to the outcome, I just want to quickly solve that problem. They don't want to hear all those details. Now, does this sound familiar to some of you? This was very interesting explaining that. Now, think of a dynamic when you're in a room of group of people where you have a nice balance between that masculine and feminine energy, where it's a lot easier to work through all those different types. And so it's something to start taking notice and be observant about your room of how the energy, and again, this doesn't always have to be a gender thing, of where things lie more. Is it more in that masculine of wanting to be outcome focused and not really wanting to talk through a process, right? You don't let anybody talk through things. Or not. And again, it's not gender related. Have fun with that one and see what kind of energy is actually in the room. Now, I have a video. Let me see if I can get this up, where I thought it was hilarious with Helen. So hold on one second here. I have to share this with you guys. This was like the coolest thing. Hold on here.
There are still things that divide us, and today I want to talk about the biggest controversies since this dress. You remember this? All right, now, I personally see a gold and white dress. How many people see a gold and white? How many people see a white dress?
Why is this freaking out on me?
Just screaming doesn't make more of you. Just an arm up helps. All right. How many of you have heard of this Laurel and Yanny thing? All right. Not the comedy duo. They stopped touring years ago. The old Yanny and Laurel. All right. I'm talking about the viral sound that is tearing the nation apart. Listen carefully to this, and then you're going to tell me if you hear Laurel or Yanny.
Laurel, 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 Laurel.
Okay, how many people hear Laurel? How many people hear Yanny? Again,
crazy,
Yanny
right?
Does not make more of you. You still are not as many people as the correct people, which are Laurel. It is.
Now, if you watch a lot of her video, it actually goes through a couple scenarios about the dress, the Yanny, the Laurel, and then another thing with the audio. I actually heard Yanny. I'd be very curious if some of you actually heard Laurel. So look that up in her show. But the point of it is all of us process information differently. And I'm actually going to find a better version of this video of a talk that I'm going to be doing about information. Even though we're all hearing the same type of information, it could be received and processed differently. So remember that whenever you're having conversations with people, and we're in the relationship section of this share, don't always think that just because we're standing there and hearing the same thing, it's being perceived the same way. And I loved that example. And it's a great example if any of you guys want to use that in your meetings or with other people to drive the point home. I loved it. I thought it was really cool. So I had to share it with you guys. Now, let's go into the next piece of it. Hold on one second here. Wait for it. Let me get back. All right, so we're going to sum up with just the 5 keys. And I think so at 12:26, I'm going to get my butt moving here. So the 5 keys that to sustain a breakthrough. And again, this is all about getting clarity. If you don't know what you want, and even knowing where you are, your current state, it's going to be hard to actually get to action on something, right? You're a little fuzzy. And so this is why getting clarity is your first step. The next one is the stories, right? And I talk about a lot of limiting beliefs, and that's the stories that are in your head. And so he has crush, destroy, annihilate, and replace any story of limitation. Because the stories that you tell yourself, right, the self-doubt, could be why you're unable to get to those things that you truly want. And this isn't easy. It's easier said than done, right? I'm on here saying, oh, change the stories in your head. Well, it takes a while. It takes effort. And there are ways to work through it a little bit faster than others. But at the end of the day, you are at cause to actually start making those changes. And that piece of the keys to sustaining a breakthrough, this is huge. Because once you get the clarity, what are you going to start telling yourself? What are those stories that you're saying in your head to get you motivated, to keep you going, right? We know that for a habit, it takes about 90 days to really start seeing something, and probably another 3 months for it to be sustainable. That's a long time. Now, when I talked about Sarah Blakely's story, right? The day 3 of her success story, she talks about all the things that she did to get where she is. Now, hey, she's the first woman that's a billionaire, but 2 years of going into Neiman's Marcus stores and trying to sell Spanx. 2 years. So that's a lot of motivation, and that's a lot of stories to be telling yourself. And so this is why it's so important that the state that you're in, right, that he shared, and the stories that you tell yourself is where it's going to push you through when things get hard. And language. He told a personal story of, watching your language, the things that you actually say. Now, he said it in one perspective of how you see the information and how you react, right? I also saw it in a different way as well when I see the words watch your language is, what do you tell yourself? Do you tell yourself that you're not smart? Well, if you keep telling yourself, which is a story, and the language that you use, see the connection? Then you're probably going to self-prophesize that. His story, when he talked about watching your language, was more about learning how you react to things. And he talked about where, pick a word that when you tend to get angry, right? One of those negative emotions. And angry is usually a good one, right, for this practice exercise. And what word do you use? Do you F-bomb, right? And he said, you know what? Find a creative word that actually breaks your pattern and brings humor to the table. Now, I am someone that always have made up names and words. Anyone that knows me, I do it. And when I used to get mad, I used to say foofinigans. And it was like a stupid word that didn't mean anything, but it actually took me out of being angry, and it worked. And it kind of threw some people, they're like, what did you say? What? And it could even break their state. So try that sometimes, even for yourself, or even come up with a silly word that when someone is really heated, that you say the most silly, crazy word, but it breaks the state of that situation. Try it. Now, I've done it a couple of times and it works. Now, you can't have a breakthrough unless you actually do something. And this is the huge one. You'll see a lot of people that will talk about, even like, you know, people that follow gurus and what might have you. But if you never take action, I'm just going to say this, then it's never going to mean anything, right? It's not going to mean shit. And so massive action is the cure for all. Just start doing something. Pure and simple. Talking about it, right, is never going to change anything. And even the smallest type of action is moving you in the direction of being forward, right? And moving forward and doing something different is what creates change. When you keep doing it, and that repeating is where you're actually going to start seeing that magic happen, right? Now, this is one that's also a lot of, coaching, especially with NLP. One of their keys to success is gratitude, and give more than when you expect to receive. You know, that's just giving. And he talks about a couple stories. He actually was in tears with this one. But think about a moment where you're not expecting anything and you give more. And it might not even be directly to who you're trying to give, but the universe kind of listens, and then something good ends up happening. Has that ever happened to any of you? When you are in a place that you're giving more out than what's in it for me attitude, the universe does hear you, and things happen, great things. Oh, I love James. You have the journal memo notation is key to significant sustained impact of change commitment. Oh, yes. I journal every day. I actually have 2 journals, by the way. They sit right up here every morning. And I love how you're bringing this up, because I actually also have a gratitude book that I bought. So I do gratitude. I talk about good things that are happening in my life. And then I have another one that actually documents triggers. So, you know, when we talk about the stories in our head, and I actually document what is triggering that particular emotion, right? What's going on, and what is that limiting belief that I have? So I do a lot of these things because I'm always doing change work, because I'm pushing through a lot of change in my life. I got out of coaching, agile coaching and transformations. I didn't want to do transformations anymore. So 12/31, this whole time I'm actually not working right now. And guess what? I still get up at 5:30. You want to talk about action? I am taking action every day. I still get up at 5:30 a.m. I still do my routines. And I am, going through a lot of the learning right now, while I'm kind of like, what do I want to do next? Now, I did plan for this. I did have a strategy for me to take this break. But my point is, it's all about creating that discipline for you. I could sleep in every day if I wanted to, but I don't. Right? Now, those of you that may or may not have had the opportunity to watch Tony Robbins' 5-Day Challenge, I'm not sure if they have. I was kind of looking to see, on YouTube, but it looked like it had a lot of people were just sharing like me about the 5-Day Challenge. I had that's why I purchased the VIP pass, because I wanted to be able to hit the replays. There's so much meat in there, and to rewind, kind of read it, like watch a segment, and taking a lot of notes. And he is right. Take a lot of notes and watch that. But here's the thing. It's great to step out of yourself And the reason why I wanted to watch Tony Robbins for actually two things. One, I wanted to see how he does things because I am, a life coach and work through it. I wanted to see, what does he do? What's that magic? And 40 something years, can't step into that, right? Yeah, but it's amazing. So that aspect I was highly curious about. But then the other thing was just even for me and embracing all the wonderful stories, all the things that he had to share. And I learned so much. Let me see if I got anything else. God, just talking about it makes my eyes water. He said something on the 5 actions of the 5th day. And I'll leave all of you with this because I think this is important. Avoid the tyranny of the how. A lot of times when we're doing something that we're not familiar with and it's different, our brains automatically go to how we're going to do it. And believe it or not, that's not the place where we need to go first. We need to first figure out what is our state, what are our emotions, what is happening currently right now. And then, as he talked about the stories in your head, to get to the point is, what are you telling yourself before you start taking action? Because here's the thing, and some of you might know and can relate to what I'm saying here is if you jump to action too quickly, right, trying to solve that problem, one, you might be solving the wrong problem, right? You didn't really take the time to explore. Or two, you're so focused on that how that state you're in and really getting into that mindset, you wonder why it doesn't follow through. And what do you do normally when things get rough? You'll go back to your old habits. And so this is why it's so important to really start from where you are. What state are you in? What's happening right now? And get real and address it. And yeah, James, you're right. We need to start journaling, write it down, talk it out. Go through that process to really understand where you are. Because in order to actually start moving forward, when you have that frame of mind, and I'm talking from even just personal experience, my actions are so much better than me just being highly reactive. Because one, you want to be able to be in a less emotional state. So we talk about disassociation in NLP a lot, right? You want to be able to disassociate yourself so you're not feeling the feeling of doing something. And that's a great exercise because you can't be objective and make good decisions about the past or the things that you choose to do if you're highly, in an emotional state. Now that emotion might be what triggered you to actually start changing something, or it could have been an event, right? I talked about stacking the pain. And sometimes it's just inspirational. There's a lot of different things why people do something. And it's always good. It's always great to ask these questions with, others. I love to hear the stories. But ultimately, again, avoid the tyranny of the how. Spend some time to just figure out where you are and figure out and get clear of what you want. Because if you're not clear what you want, this is why spinning happens. Maybe if you guys have ever spinned, right? You just jumped into doing something and then boom, you wonder why you get what you get. You either don't get the results that you want, or you get so defeated that you give up. And I really hate to see that with people. And so this is where when you have someone that can help you through this process, it's a lot easier said than done. And then, helping you motivate. I'm really fortunate that when even doing videos, I don't know if all of you know this, I posted on LinkedIn. I was afraid to actually do my first video. And I think it took me a year to make my first video, believe it or not. And look at me, I'm like always on now. And it's because I was telling all the stories and doing all these things. But there was a certain moment where I just decided to make that change. And I just started doing it. I could have made and continued making all the excuses in the world, but one is I'm enjoying myself now. Two, it's allowing me to get out there. And hopefully I'm helping others think about, how they can work on being a better version of themselves, or think about how they might approach a problem. That's pretty cool. So this is why I do what I do, because one, I love to teach. I used to be a teacher, and yeah, I like to talk, but I love being able to help others. And so now, me not being afraid on the video, this is awesome, right? I got past it. So next week, let me bring up here. So next week, I'm trying to figure out what time I'm going to do my live show today. So please bear with me. But next week, we're going to have some fun talking about the secret guide to the 6 principles of success. So we're going to walk through all of those and deep dive into that of what that means and how that can help all of you. So that's going to be the live for next Tuesday. And again, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You always will get notified of any videos or the lives that I post up. I'm going to try to do every Tuesday. I'm trying to work out my schedule right now since I revived my Tuesday lives. Before it was at 7 o'clock. Now I had 12 o'clock today, but I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm not going to lie. Now, those of you that are interested in just free strategy session, you're trying to create an awesome goal, something that you're trying to achieve as an outcome, I do a free 45-minute strategy session. So hopefully that, if it's something that I can help you with, but if not, you walk away with at least some kind of plan and get some kind of clarity to where you can start taking action, just something, right? So if you're interested, check out my calendar, that link. It's also in my YouTube description. And again, that's 45 minutes. That's my giveaway to at least allow, for me to help someone maybe start off in a better direction. So again, thank you so much. I will see you guys next Tuesday. And so don't forget, next week is the secret guide to the secret guide. I can't even talk in my own title. The secret guide to 6 principles of success. And so I will see you guys next week. Bye now.